The sky was bruised with storm clouds when Ava Kingston's GPS rerouted her. Again. The monotone voice crackled. Recalculating. Turn left in 600 feet. Her eyes flicked from the windshield to the dim-lit road ahead. Potholes littered the pavement. She squinted through the wiper blades as they dragged across the glass, smearing more than clearing. Seriously? She muttered, checking the map again. She was nowhere near where she should have been. Highway traffic had been at a standstill, so she'd trusted the GPS's faster route. Now she was in a forgotten industrial district with graffiti-covered buildings and flickering street lamps that hummed like mosquitoes in the humid air. The engine groaned under the pressure. Her rented Ford Fusion was not built for detours like this. Then it happened. A loud metallic clunk echoed beneath the hood, followed by a choking sound and a sudden loss of power. The dashboard lights flashed wildly for a split second, and the steering wheel stiffened. No, 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 don't you dare, she hissed. She pressed the gas. Nothing. The car rolled to a slow, pitiful stop on the shoulder of a narrow, litter-strewn road. Ava's heart sank. She turned the key again. Silence. Once more. Still nothing. She leaned her forehead against the wheel, the panic rising in her chest like floodwater. She was alone, dressed in a business suit with designer heels, makeup melting from the humidity, and parked in what looked like the opening scene of a crime documentary. She glanced at her phone. 0 bars, no signal. Of course. She let out a shaky breath and looked around. The streets were empty. Broken bottles glittered along the curb. A stray dog trotted through a nearby alley and disappeared behind a dumpster. A building loomed beside her, with a neon sign flickering like a dying firefly. Jackal's Biker Bar. Just her luck. It looked like the kind of place she'd have crossed the street to avoid. Motorcycles lined the curb out front. Chrome, loud pipes, matte black tanks, one with skull decals. A low rumble of music spilled out from behind a black door, half covered in duct tape. Ava hesitated. Was it safer to stay in the car? Wait for a random Good Samaritan on a road nobody seemed to drive anymore? Or step into the den of outlaws? Neither option was comforting, but the car felt like a coffin now, and the bar, at least, had people. Her hand trembled as she grabbed her purse. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Smudged eyeliner, frizzy hair clinging to her temples. She looked more like a panicked raccoon than the polished marketing executive she had been 3 hours ago. Still, appearances didn't matter now. Only guts did. Okay, she whispered to herself. In. Ask for a phone. Out. She pushed the car door open and stepped out into the humid air. Her heels clacked against the wet asphalt. She hugged her purse tightly to her chest like a life jacket and walked toward the bar, pulse pounding with every step. As she reached the door, a man stepped outside for a smoke. He was massive, 6'5" at least, muscles on top of muscles, leather vest covered in patches and pins. His eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of her, a walking contradiction in a pencil skirt and heels. Ava froze. You lost, sweetheart? He asked, voice rough but not cruel. She nodded, then cleared her throat. My car died. No signal. I need to use a phone. He looked her up and down, then shrugged. Better come inside. Ain't safe out here. Ava hesitated at the threshold. The noise from within hit her like a wall. Rowdy laughter, pool balls clacking, someone shouting lyrics off-key. She took a deep breath, stepped inside, and felt 100 eyes snap toward her. Every conversation stopped. Bottles paused mid-air. The jukebox hiccuped. She had just walked into a world where she did not belong. But survival had no dress code. The air inside Jackal's bar was thick, with smoke, sweat, and the unmistakable musk of motor oil and aged whiskey. The lighting was dim, casting shadows that made the faces at the bar seem like flickering sketches from a nightmare. Every head in the room turned as Ava stepped through the door, heels clicking against the scuffed wooden floor. She was out of place, desperately, visibly, unmistakably out of place. Her cream-colored blouse and black pencil skirt were wrinkled now, sweat staining the collar, but they still screamed corporate. So did her trembling posture. She clutched her purse against her chest like it might deflect a bullet. From behind the bar, a grizzled woman with silver hair and a bandana narrowed her eyes. A biker with a serpent tattoo curling down his neck let out a low whistle. "Well, look what the storm dragged in," he muttered, leaning on the pool table. Ava's heart thudded violently in her chest. She scanned the room. 10, maybe 12 patrons, most wearing vests and heavy boots, most looking like they'd sooner arm wrestle a bear than offer someone directions. I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. "I don't mean to bother anyone. My car broke down just outside, and I don't have cell service. I just need to borrow a phone. I'll be gone right after, I promise." There was a long pause. Then, from a booth near the jukebox, a voice drawled, "You walk in here like a deer in rush hour traffic, and you want to borrow a phone?" Laughter erupted. Not mocking, but surprised, like she was the punchline to a joke no one expected. Ava shrunk slightly. The large man who'd held the door for her, the one with arms like tree trunks, stepped inside behind her and closed the door with a heavy thud. He walked past her and nodded toward the bar. "She's good," he said. "Car died, just needs a phone." The woman behind the bar grunted, pulled a battered flip phone from under the counter, and slid it across the bar top. "Don't drop it," she said gruffly. "It's held together by duct tape and nicotine." Ava blinked. "Seriously?" The bartender smirked. "You want to get home or not?" Ava moved hesitantly toward the phone, every step echoing like a warning. She dialed the roadside assistance number, praying the ancient phone wouldn't burst into flames in her hands. It barely rang once before a robotic voice said, "We are experiencing higher than usual call volumes. Estimated wait time, 37 minutes. Of course. She ended the call, sighed, and rubbed her forehead. She didn't have time to wait. She was supposed to be halfway across town, pitching a community outreach project to a panel of executives by 8 p.m. The irony made her chest ache. She was trying to help people, and now she was stuck in a place where she wasn't sure she'd make it out in one piece. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the bartender said, sliding her a napkin. "Sit down before you fall over." Ava hesitated and sat. "Thank you," she muttered. "Name's Mags," the woman said, cracking open a root beer and handing it over. "And you?" Ava Kingston. You from around here?" Ava shook her head. "West End." "Figures." A man from the corner booth got up and approached. He looked to be in his 40s, face sun-lined but friendly beneath a rough beard. His vest had more patches than leather. Some military, some biker club. The largest read, Jackals MC, founder. "I'm Nate," he said, voice low and calm. "You all right?" "I think so," Ava replied. "Just shaken up. This whole area, I didn't even know it existed. I thought I knew this city." Nate smiled faintly. "Most people don't want to know this part." He glanced at the door, then back to her. "Why don't you hang here till your toe gets here? No one'll bother you." Ava looked around. The bikers had returned to their conversations. The music was back on, and no one seemed to care she was still there. She nodded slowly. "Okay, thanks. I guess. Not what I expected when I broke down outside a biker bar." Nate chuckled. "Most people expect the worst. Sometimes that's not what they get." Ava looked at him for a beat longer than necessary, and for the first time that night, she felt her pulse slow. Maybe this night had a different kind of story to tell. Ava sat nursing the cold root beer Mags had handed her, trying not to flinch every time the door slammed or a gravel-voiced biker laughed too loud. She tucked a strand of damp hair behind her ear and stared blankly at the carved-up tabletop in front of her. It was covered in initials and crude drawings, most faded with age, some etched with clear, angry purpose. She hadn't expected kindness here. And yet, no one had catcalled her, threatened her, or made a move she couldn't handle. In fact, they'd let her be. In their own way, these rough-edged strangers had given her more safety than half the men in business suits she'd shared elevators with. "You sure you're all right?" Nate asked again, sliding into the seat across from her. Ava blinked and nodded. "Yeah, just surprised." "At what?" "That you're not, you know." She gestured around vaguely. "Dangerous." Nate let out a dry chuckle and leaned back. "Lady, the real danger doesn't wear leather and ride Harleys. It wears smiles and sells insurance." She laughed, genuinely this time. "You got a point," she admitted, shaking her head. "I've been in conference rooms scarier than this bar." "I bet." Nate watched her for a beat. "What's your story?" Ava hesitated. "You mean tonight, or in general?" "Dealer's choice." She took a deep breath, surprised at her own willingness to talk. Maybe it was the root beer, or maybe the exhaustion had burned through her usual wall of guarded professionalism. "I work in community development," she said. "I'm pitching a citywide initiative: shelters, food kitchens, job training. But the funding's impossible to secure unless I can show high-risk area support." That's what tonight's pitch was about. "You were trying to help people like us." She nodded. "Yeah, but I didn't mean to end up here." Nate tilted his head, thoughtful. "What if I told you you're exactly where you needed to be?" Ava raised an eyebrow. "You saying fate has a motorcycle and a sense of humor?" "Something like that." There was a pause. Nate drummed his fingers against the table. "You want your pitch to work? You need more than stats and pie charts. You need proof it matters." Ava leaned in. "What do you mean?" "We run a shelter down the block," he said. "Real quiet. No red tape. No PR. Just beds, food, and second chances." Ava blinked. "Wait, you do?" "Jackals ain't just chrome and bar fights," he said. "Some of us served overseas. Some got clean. Some got out of prison and never wanted to go back. We help the next guy do the same." A lump formed in Ava's throat. She hadn't expected this. Nate leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You want something real to show your sponsors? Come see it, tonight. I'll take you." "I don't want to intrude." "You won't. You'll learn." She bit her lip. Everything in her screamed to stick with the plan. Stay buttoned up, stay on schedule. But that plan had failed her tonight. Maybe something raw, real, and unexpected was exactly what she needed. "All right," she said quietly. "Let's go." Nate stood up and nodded to Mags. "Watch the place." Mags gave a two-finger salute, then glanced at Ava. "You're not gonna regret it, sweetheart. Just keep your heels off the gravel. Trip hazard." Ava smiled nervously and followed Nate to the door. As they stepped outside, the heavy scent of oil and rain mixed with the distant wail of sirens in the city beyond. She wasn't sure where this road led, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like she might be driving towards something good. Something true. Something that could change everything. The ride was short, but Ava felt every jolt of the road as if it were rewiring something inside her. Nate's bike was loud and unapologetic, but she clung to him, her heart thudding not in fear, but in adrenaline-soaked wonder. They pulled into a narrow lot behind what looked like a condemned warehouse. The only sign of life was a faded mural on the side, a phoenix rising from a heap of chains. Nate shut off the engine. "This way," he said over his shoulder. Ava followed him to a rusted steel door. It looked like it hadn't opened in a decade, but it did, easily, swinging inward into a hallway washed in warm, golden light. Inside, it was nothing like she expected. The space was clean, but lived in. Folding tables lined the walls, topped with trays of hot food. A wall of donated coats stood near the entrance. At the back, rows of cots, all made, sat waiting beneath a mural of wings painted on exposed brick. Men and women, young and old, sat quietly, eating or folding laundry, playing checkers, or chatting. A toddler played with a battered fire truck at his mother's feet. There was no chaos, no drugs, no danger, only peace. "Holy crap," Ava whispered. Nate smiled. Not bad, right? It's amazing. How do people not know about this? Because we don't ask for handouts, he replied. We build it ourselves. We've had help. Mags runs the food line. Some of the boys fixed the plumbing. We patch each other up, not just physically. He led her down the row of tables. A tall, wiry man nodded at him. Hey, boss. This is Ava, Nate said. She's a friend. Treat her like it. The man stuck out a hand. I'm Leo. Welcome to the nest. Ava shook his hand. The nest? Place for broken wings, Leo said with a shrug. We help 'em fly again. Ava felt that lump rise in her throat again. The phrase dug into her heart. They walked further inside, past the cots, past a wall of Polaroid photos, before and after shots. One showed a man unconscious on a sidewalk. The second showed him suited up for a job interview. Another featured a young woman with a black eye in one frame, and in the next, she was holding a diploma. I don't understand, Ava whispered. How have I never heard of this? Nate looked at her. Because people don't look this far down. He paused, then added quietly, But you did. Ava turned back toward the photos, unable to speak. Something in her chest cracked wide open. The world she'd been fighting to change had just stepped out of theory and into flesh and blood. She saw the project not as a proposal or an ambition anymore, but as a lifeline. Suddenly, her expensive pitch deck, her fundraising gala, her PowerPoint slides all felt hollow in comparison to the quiet dignity she saw here. This could change everything, she murmured. We're not looking for publicity, Nate said firmly. This is about the people. No reporters, no suits. I don't want to expose you, Ava said quickly. I want to honor you. If I can prove to the board that places like this exist, if I can show that communities are stepping up, then maybe we can get funding that supports you instead of replacing you. Nate raised an eyebrow. You're serious? As a car crash, she said with a soft smile. He barked out a laugh. All right then, Ava Kingston, let's make a deal. They shook hands. But it felt more like a vow. She spent another hour there, talking to volunteers, hearing stories that gripped her soul. She listened to a teenage boy tell her how Nate stopped him from joining a gang. She watched a woman hand out handmade sandwiches to two kids who clearly hadn't eaten in a day. Ava wasn't just observing, she was absorbing. When she stepped back outside, the rain had stopped. Her car, miraculously, was running. Leo had taken a look under the hood while they were inside and found a loose battery connection. You're good to go, he said with a wink. Ava looked at the men, these so-called rough bikers, and felt her eyes sting. She'd come in afraid of the worst, but what she'd found was something close to the best. A week later, Ava stood in the lobby of the city's grandest municipal building, clutching a leather folder so tightly her knuckles were white. She had done presentations a dozen times before, but never like this. This wasn't theory, it was truth. Ms. Kingston? A suited aide called out. She lifted her chin. Yes? They're ready for you. Inside the oak-paneled chamber, city council members, non-profit directors, and 3 high-ranking donors sat behind a crescent-shaped desk. Cameras were mounted in each corner, live-streaming the proceedings. Her PowerPoint was ready. Her speech was memorized. But she didn't lead with slides. She led with a photo. The screen filled with the image of the mural. The phoenix rising from chains. The very one from the jackal's hidden shelter. It was raw. It was gritty. And it was real. Ladies and gentlemen, Ava began, my proposal today is not just a plan. It's a reality. There was a murmur. In the worst part of town, she continued, I found the best of humanity. I want to tell you about it. She walked the council through her story. The flat tire, the fear, the bar. She didn't sugarcoat the roughness or the initial panic. She let it sit heavy like it had that night. Then she showed them the nest. Photos of the food tables, the mural wall, the before and after Polaroids, the volunteers. the toddler with the toy fire truck. She watched as the room shifted. The donor in the red tie leaned forward. One of the councilwomen blinked hard, eyes glassy. What I saw, Ava said slowly, wasn't just a patchwork solution. It was a community, a self-sustaining ecosystem built on grit and grace. And it's working. Someone coughed. Ava turned to the final slide, a quote painted on the shelter's wall in black ink. It's not about saving people. It's about reminding them they were never lost. There was a long silence. Then one councilman cleared his throat. Are you saying we should fund biker gangs? Laughter twitched at the edges of the room. Ava didn't smile. I'm saying we fund people who are already doing the work, people who know what survival looks like, and are helping others reclaim their lives. Another member, Councilwoman Juno, tilted her head. But how do you ensure accountability in such unorthodox programs? Ava paused. By showing up, by partnering, not replacing. They don't need us to control them. They need us to believe in them. The silence returned, but this time it was reverent. When she finished, the room erupted, not in applause, because that wasn't allowed, but in the quiet energy of heads nodding, pens scribbling, eyes changed. That afternoon, the vote passed 5-2. A pilot program was approved, one that would redirect unused city funds to grassroots shelters like the Nest. It wasn't everything Ava hoped for, but it was a start. And for people like Nate, Leo, and the families they served, it was everything. As Ava exited the building, the bright spring sun cast long shadows on the marble steps. Nate was waiting across the street, leaning against his motorcycle, arms crossed, helmet in hand. She grinned and jogged over. It passed, she said, breathless. Nate just gave her a crooked smile. I saw, watched the stream. Why didn't you come in? Leather jackets aren't really dress code, he said with a shrug. Besides, you didn't need backup. She nodded, heart thudding. You know, she began slowly, I wasn't just stranded that night. I was stuck, in my head, in my mission. But you pulled me out. You pulled yourself out. She looked at him, grateful. You were the spark. He held out a helmet. Want a ride? She hesitated, then took it. This time, she didn't hold on out of fear. She held on because this road, this new, unexpected road, was hers now. Weeks passed. The pilot program was live. Applications poured in from dozens of grassroots shelters and underfunded safe houses across the city. Ava found herself flooded, not with stress, but with purpose. She visited each site, sat with founders, listened to stories that weren't polished or palatable, but true. Every one of them reminded her of that night she stood, terrified, in front of the Jackal's bar. And every time, her heart softened a little more. But there was one visit she'd saved for last. The Nest. She hadn't returned since the day of the vote, partly because she wanted the city's sudden spotlight to focus elsewhere, but mostly because she wasn't sure what she'd find. Now she pulled up, in a fully repaired car no less, and walked past the mural that had started it all. The phoenix's wings looked brighter in the sunlight. Inside, it was bustling. The space had doubled in size. Volunteers zipped between stations. New coats, fresh food, neatly labeled hygiene kits, all stacked, sorted, ready for distribution. Mags greeted her with a grin. Ava, you look like you've slept this week. I have, and I can't believe this place. She gave Ava a big hug. None of this would have happened without you. Ava smiled, but shook her head. That's not true. I just turned on the lights. You guys were already shining. Mags wiped her eyes with a dish towel. Still, we'll never forget. Leo found her next, giving her a side hug and handing her a steaming cup of coffee. Don't worry, he said. We put the sugar in the coffee this time. She laughed and took a sip, and nearly gasped. Okay, you've upgraded. But the moment she truly wasn't prepared for came next. A soft tug on her sleeve. She looked down and saw the same toddler she'd seen on her first visit. Same big brown eyes, but now wearing a clean shirt and new shoes. He clutched something in his hand, a smudged piece of paper folded into quarters. Ava kneeled. He held it out. She unfolded it carefully. It was a crayon drawing, a stick figure woman with brown hair standing beside a motorcycle and a man with sunglasses. Behind them, a big red heart. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, it said, "Thank you for helping my family." Ava blinked hard. The room swam. Before she could even respond, the little boy hugged her, fast and fierce, and ran off. She pressed the drawing to her chest, trying not to fall apart right then and there. That was when she heard the familiar sound of a motorcycle rumbling outside. She turned. Nate walked in, helmet tucked under his arm, grease smudged on his hands. He stopped in the doorway when he saw her. They stood like that for a heartbeat too long. Finally, he walked over. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey," she replied, voice thick. "This place, it's really happening." She nodded. "Because of you. Because of all of you." He rubbed the back of his neck. "We had people come last week, a family of 5. They got turned away from the city shelter, came here. We had beds, food, a future dot." Her eyes welled again. "That's what this was always about," she whispered. He looked down at the paper in her hands. "That's from Eli. Kid's got a thing for you." "He has good taste." Nate laughed. "Yeah, he does." There was a pause. "Listen," he said finally. "I've been thinking. You showed us how to fight smarter, how to get people to see us. I want to do the same for you." "For me?" she asked, brow furrowed. "Your mission, this pilot program. I've got friends in 3 other cities doing the same kind of underground work. They'd follow you, if you're ready to go national." Ava blinked. "You're serious?" "You've got the fire," he said. "Let's build something that lasts." Her mind raced, her heart thudded. Her instincts said yes. "Yes," she said aloud. But then she frowned. "I can't run it from a distance. If we go bigger, I need to be all in. I'd have to leave my job, my apartment." Nate tilted his head. "Then leave it." "Just like that?" "Just like that. Come ride with us." She laughed through her tears. "You always say things like they're that easy." "They are," he said, stepping closer. "When they're right." Another pause. Then she looked up. "All right," she whispered. "Let's fly." He grinned. "Phoenix style?" She nodded. He held out his hand. She took it. And that was that. Ava Kingston didn't just get a flat tire that night. She got a new mission, a new family, a new beginning. And she never forgot the little boy's note, or the biker bar in the worst part of town that turned out to be the best part of her life.